Hello Year 2, how are you? And welcome to today's reading lesson. So in our last reading lesson, we started to look at the book Fantastic Mr. Fox, and we answered some questions on chapter 1, some retrieval questions. Now today we're going to be moving on to chapter 2, and our focus for today is looking at inferences. So remember, the answers to inference questions aren't in the book. We have to use our own knowledge and what we've already read to work out the answers, to infer the answers. Now this lesson, again, like last lesson, we're also going to be looking at some vocabulary. So we're going to find the word in the text, look at the words around it and see if we can work out its meaning. Okay, now before we move on to chapter 2, I want to see how much you can remember from chapter 1. So here's your retrieval quiz. Do these sentences refer to Farmer Boggis, Bunce or Bean? So the first one, he was a chicken farmer. Second one, he was lean, he was short, he was a turkey and apple farmer. Now, if you need to use your book from last time, that is completely fine. But if you can do it from memory, that is brilliant, okay? So pause the video now and which farmer do each of these sentences refer to? Okay, Yeti, so he was a chicken farmer. Which farmer was a chicken farmer? Yes, that's right, it was Farmer Boggis, because remember, he ate 9 chickens a day, smothered in dumplings, and they described him as enormously fat, didn't they? Now, he was lean. Which farmer was lean? Well, it's not going to be Boggis, because like we've just said, the book describes him as enormously fat. So which farmer was it? Yes, that's right, it was Farmer Bean, wasn't it? Because he was very thin in the book. And look, an easy way to remember this is lean rhymes with bean. Okay, the next one, he was short. And in the book, it says that he can't reach the surface of the water in a swimming pool. Which farmer was that? Yes, well done. It was Farmer Bunce. Fantastic. So we've got Farmer Boggis is a chicken farmer. Farmer Bean is lean. Farmer Bunce is short. Now, who was the turkey and apple farmer? Yes, fantastic. It was Farmer Bean, wasn't it? He kept turkeys in his orchard, which was full of apple trees. Fantastic. Well done for remembering all of that. Now, let's move on to chapter 2. You can find chapter 2, the pages, on the resource that I've sent you. Year 2 reading, 22nd of January, resource 1, okay? So you can read along with me or you can listen to me and then read it yourself. So here we go. Chapter 2. Mr. Fox. On a hill above the valley, there was a wood. In the wood, there was a huge tree. Under the tree, there was a hole. In the hole lived Mr. Fox and Mrs. Fox and their 4 small foxes. Every evening, as soon as it got dark, Mr. Fox would say to Mrs. Fox, "Well, my darling, what shall it be this time? A plump chicken from Boggis, a duck or a goose from Bunce, or a nice turkey from Bean?" And when Mrs. Fox had told him what she wanted, Mr. Fox would creep down into the valley in the darkness of the night and help himself. So on this page, we've got the word creep, okay, describing how Mr. Fox goes down to the valley in the darkness of the night to go and get the food. So let's have a look at this word. So it says Mr. Fox would creep down. So creep is a verb, to creep, and it has 1 syllable. Are you ready? Let's clap together. 3, 2, 1, creep. There we go, fantastic. Now creep means to move slowly and carefully to avoid being heard or noticed. So when Mr. Fox went down to the valley, he crept because he didn't want anyone to hear him or to see him. I wonder why. Now, I've used it in another sentence here to give you another context for the word. So the mum crept past the sleeping baby. Why might a mum creep past a sleeping baby? Because she might not want them to hear her, and maybe she just got them to sleep, so she doesn't want to wake them up. Okay, so some synonyms, so words which mean the same thing. We've got tiptoe, so when you tiptoe, you're nice and quiet on your feet so nobody hears you, and sneak. If you sneak somewhere, you don't want anybody to see you. Okay, so he's just creeping down to the valley to go and help himself to the food that Mrs. Fox wants for her, Mr. Fox, and their 4 small foxes. Let's find out what happens next. Boggis and Bunce and Bean knew very well what was going on, and it made them wild with rage. Ooh, so they were very angry. They were not men who liked to give anything away. Less still did they like anything to be stolen from them. So every night, each of them would take his shotgun and hide in a dark place somewhere on his own farm, hoping to catch the robber. Who's the robber? Yes, it's fantastic Mr. Fox, isn't it? He's come to get his food for the night. But Mr. Fox was too clever for them. He always approached a farm with the wind blowing in his face, and this meant that if any man were lurking in the shadows ahead, the wind would carry the smell of that man to Mr. Fox's nose from far away. Thus, which is another word for therefore, if Mr. Boggis was hiding behind his chicken house number 1, Mr. Fox would smell him out from 50 yards off and quickly change direction, heading for the chicken house number 4 at the other end of the farm. Okay, so he's trying to dodge them so he can smell them if the wind's going the right way, and then he changes direction and heads to a different chicken house. Now, on this page, we have the word lurking, okay, and it says, and this meant that if any man were lurking in the shadows ahead. Okay, well, why might the farmers be lurking? Let's find out what it means. So in the book it says, and that meant that if any man were lurking in the shadows ahead. So lurk is a verb, okay, to lurk, and it has 1 syllable again. Are you ready? Let's clap together. 3, 2, 1, lurk. Fantastic. And it means to wait or move in a secret way so you can't be seen. So the men would be hiding in the shadows. They'd be lurking in the shadows so that no one could see them. Okay, so who are those men, do you think, lurking in the shadows? Yes, they're the farmers, and they're looking for fantastic Mr. Fox, aren't they? So I've put it in another sentence here. The fox lurked behind the trees, waiting for his prey. Okay, so he's lurking behind the trees because he doesn't want his prey to see him, because if it does see him, it might run away. Okay, and he won't get his food for the evening. Now, some synonyms are to hide, so you can say hide in the shadows, or sneak. So if you sneak around in the shadows, you're lurking, you don't want anybody to see you. Okay, so Mr. Fox, he's too clever for them, and he knows exactly what to do and how to use the wind to help him smell out to the farmers and know which direction to go in. Okay, how do you think the farmers feel about this? Let's find out. Dang and blast that lousy beast, cried Boggis. I'd like to rip his guts out, said Bunce. He must be killed, cried Bean. That's not very nice, is it? That's not very nice way to talk about somebody. But how? Said Boggis. How on earth can we catch the blighter? Mr. Bean picked his nose delicately with a long finger. Ah, I have a plan, he said. You've never had a decent plan yet, said Bunce. Shut up and listen. Oh, we don't talk to somebody like that, do we? I know my year 2 class definitely wouldn't say that. That's not the way to talk to someone. That's not very nice, is it? Said Mr. Bean, said Farmer Bean. Tomorrow night we will all hide just outside the hole where the fox lives. We will wait there until he comes out, then bang, 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 bang. Very clever, said Bunce. But first we shall have to find the hole. My dear Bunce, I've already found it, said the crafty Bean. It's up in the wood on the hill. It's under a huge tree. Oh, so they know where fantastic Mr. Fox lives. Oh dear. Now, on this page, we have the word crafty, okay, and it's describing Farmer Bean. Now, he's just come up with a plan, hasn't he? So, what might crafty mean? Pause the video and have a think, and then I'll tell you what crafty means and see if you are correct. Okay, yeah, it is. So, crafty. It says, my dear Bunce, I've already found it, said the crafty Bean. So crafty is an adjective because it's describing Farmer Bean. It has 2 syllables. Clap along with me. 3, 2, 1. Crafty. There we go. And it means skillful, so good at tricking others but not always in a nice way. So in the story, they're going to trick fantastic Mr. Fox, aren't they, by hiding outside his house. Now, another word which means crafty is cunning. Okay, so we spoke about when we did Little Red Riding Hood, we said that the wolf was cunning, didn't we? Because he told Little Red Riding Hood to go one way so he could run to the granny's house. So he was tricking Little Red Riding Hood. He'd come up with a little plan. And that's the same as Farmer Bean in the story, isn't it? So now let's have a look at our questions. So these are our inference questions for today. We have 5 of them. Number 1, why do you think Mr. Fox would creep down into the valley? How do you think Mrs. Fox feels when Mr. Fox goes to get the food? If any man were lurking in the shadows ahead, why might the farmers be lurking? Dang and blast that lousy beast, cried Boggis. How do you think Boggis is feeling and why? Number 5, do you think Bunce trusted that Bean's plan would be good? Okay, so those are your 5 questions. Now we're going to do the first one together. So why do you think Mr. Fox would creep down into the valley? So that was on the first page, wasn't it? Now, Mr. Fox does this every night, doesn't he? So he knows what the farmers have in plan for him. So if he's creeping down to the valley, he doesn't want anyone to see him, and he probably wouldn't want anybody to see him because he knows what the farmers will do if they do see him. So he's going to keep a low profile. He's going to be nice and quiet with his creeping down to the valley so that the farmers do not see him and he can go and get the food and go back to his family. Okay, so we can say for this question, Mr. Fox would creep down into the valley because he knew that the farmers were waiting for him and he didn't want to get caught. Okay, so that could be your answer for the first question. Now, number 2, we're going to think about this one together. How do you think Mrs. Fox feels when Mr. Fox goes to get the food? Well, we know that Mr. Fox is creeping down into the valley, and we know why he's creeping down into the valley. So how might that make Mrs. Fox feel? Her husband's all on his own, going down to the valley, and she knows that there are 3 farmers there that are trying to catch him because they don't want him to take their food. So how do you think Mrs. Fox might feel about this? Well, what I'd like you to do now is have a go at the question number 2, 3, 4 and 5. I've given you some ideas for question number 2, but can you come up with some answers for the others? Okay, so you will find these questions on worksheet Year 2 Reading, 22nd of January, Resource 2, okay? And I'm looking forward to your answers to these. Remember, you need to write in full sentences and you need to use both your own knowledge and what you've read in the book to answer the questions. You won't find exactly the answer in the book, okay? Like we did yesterday with the retrieval questions, they were just there, weren't they? Not for inference questions. We have to use the clues and our own knowledge, okay? So, brilliant. If you go off now and do your inference questions, and then when you're finished, you send them to the office and I can have a look at them to see how you've got on. Okay, Year 2, have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.